Wow. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having us today. Before we start, I think we just wanted to go through a few of the themes that have come out of today. Omnichannel, audio being that bedrock from what Kim said in that first session. Retail media and audio growing, digital out of home and audio. Some really nice synergies and narratives that are coming out for 2026. And then what Thad mentioned, going beyond ROI. And so today, with my panellists, we are going to chat about the most exciting topic, I think, that everyone has wanted to sit back and listen to everyone here around audio investment going into 2026. So before we start the formalities, I would like to have our amazing panellists firstly introduce themselves, so their name, where they're from, and maybe just something a little bit cheeky. So wanted to see what the last song that they streamed for their Spotify Wrapped that ruins their reputation. Go.
Yeah, I can kick it off. So I'm Harry Caulfield. I'm the group lead at Foxtel across all things programmatic. So what's that? What's it now? It's KO, Binge and Foxtel. We don't need to talk about Hubble. But geez, what a song. And the last song that I streamed that ruined my Wrapped as a new father was White Noise.
Get it.
So that's definitely not great.
I think I'm...
Oh, you're still mic'd up?
Yeah. So I'm Thad. You've just heard from me. I'm the National Head of Planning at OMD. And from my music, I got a 6-year-old daughter, so it was K-pop Demon Hunters, and we were golden this year. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Keith. I'm the Managing Director of Involved Media, and I think it's, and I was listening to it this morning again, so it's just going to ruin it again, is all the Robbie, and it was Rock DJ this morning. But can I just say, 10 years, crazy. And is it just me who remembers that I used to have conversations with people who actually the only podcasts they could recall were My Dad Wrote a Porno and Teacher's Pet. Doesn't that seem like an absolute age ago?
Hi, I'm Charlotte Tudor Silva from the Trade Desk, and up to you if you think this ruined it or made it better, but it was Stuck With You by the Pussycat Dolls.
I'm Tom Massarola. I'm the Sydney Head of Investment at Zenith. I actually didn't do a Spotify Wrap this year, but if I did, K-pop was on constantly and still is. My whole family's going to a tease and I'm staying at home looking after the 3-year-old, so that's me.
Wow. K-pop was one in our household too, and my daughter's having her 4th birthday party. It's K-pop themed, so watch this space. So 10 years, as Sarah mentions, like, wow, that's like pretty amazing. And I feel like audio is having its moment, and there are different threads that are, as we mentioned before, that are coming through around this omni-channel strategy and all the different types of other formats that it's tapping into. So we've warmed up. Sarah, I'm going to pass it off to you first. From your vantage point of an MD, I wanted to ask you 2 questions, and I'm sure the room would like to know and get your perspective on this. Have you seen the spend shift into audio from other channels? And then secondly, if so, what percentage, if you can share, or thereabouts, your clients' spend is being split between streaming audio versus podcasting?
Sure thing. So yes, I don't actually believe that audio is just having a moment. Maybe digital audio is having a moment. I think audio has always been incredibly strong for a number of reasons, not just because 30 years ago I used to work with Christian O'Connell, who was a sponsorship assistant for a minute before he went off to 2CR at Bournemouth, and the rest is radio history. But yes, the last 3 years we've seen probably an acceleration into audio, including digital audio. And that's because, obviously, the ongoing fragmentation of television. We believe that audio is less cluttered than social. I think creativity hits differently in audio, and that is you're able to create earworms, you're able to create sonic logos. We do a lot of work around that area. And ultimately, and I have no proof for this, but I did write something on LinkedIn the other day and clever people contacted me, so I'm going to start reading about it. But I genuinely believe there's some screen fatigue right now, and we owe it to our clients to look at how then audio can combat that. So the second question you asked me was about the numbers, and we're actually, I think 2 weeks ago at Heard, Mark Ritson talked about 11%, I think, was it Lizzie? We're actually above that. We're probably about 14 or 15% in audio already, but if you look at the split of that, it's still 90% linear or broadcast and 10% probably digital and podcasting. Now, I think the 90% probably reflects when you do buy from the networks, the three big ones, the three big players, you do get digital within that, and that probably that 90% counts some of the money there. But basically, we still talk to our clients about, we have a lot of mid-market brands, and really radio is still one of the most, or if not the most cost-efficient way to achieve mass reach, and that hasn't changed for a while.
Cool, thank you. And then Harry, I guess the same question from you, obviously being at Foxtel. Are you seeing the same shift as Sarah?
I think in a bit of a different light, and not to... I mean, I buy from a lot of people here, so not to annoy anyone, and also not to talk ill of the agency that we work with, but we found a massive shift into digital as a whole. As a streaming service on both KO and Binge, we know that the place to be at the forefront is in those digital areas, whether that be social, digital audio, podcasting, CTV, BVOD and the like. But what we have seen is that our audio budgets themselves have increased based off the amount that is now done in programmatic. So the things like the Spotify Ad Exchange, the work that Acast is doing across all their builds in podcasting and growing out that genre, that allows us to be a lot more tactical and strategic in how we bring that forward. And it is from that top-down methodology. Like, everyone knows what KO and Binge is in this room, I hope. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. But we don't need to do awareness. You know, we are pure now consideration, and that's the driving force behind what we're doing. And in terms of that percentage split, like, whilst it does grow, you know, we still see majority of our spend going to streaming audio, and then that, you know, 30 to 40% going to the right tactical podcast.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that creator economy is driving that spend into podcasts?
I have a lot of opinions about the creator economy. Specifically now, not in agency and client side. I think the creator economy is really strong as long as it's anchored in podcasting. And I think we've all touched on that at some stage today. I think one of the big things, though, when it does come to the creator ecosystem is we start, as they've anchored in audio, that's where predominantly the largest amount of our investment should be. And yet, for some reason, we've decided that their social acumen is worth 10 times that. Like, quite frankly, a 15-second video or something that's very obviously an ad on someone doing a dance or a weird hand gesture does not deserve $20,000 for one post. And I think that the reality is that as we keep going into this and as we go deeper into it, we're losing the reality of why we have decided to buy into audio and why have we given so much to this creator concept that surely has been established in a different, I guess, channel per se, but needs to be reflected in how we invest. Because I've got long tail in my audio and then I have 2 posts, but my long tail costs me 50K and 2 posts cost me 60. Why is that the reality? So we have a bit of a back and forth internally, but at this moment in time, anything that we do in the creator economy, that is systemically anchored in audio first. And if it makes sense and is justified in budget, we will talk about it.
I might go off script there, but anyone else on the panel have any thoughts or anything addition in relation to that?
Probably not as angry.
No. I've talked a lot already.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to go?
No, I agree.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, that was easy. Great. And you mentioned programmatic and you know, the way that you buy that way. And just to sort of start that conversation around programmatic, has programmatic or even the other ways that you buy, how are you actually planning and buying and activating audio today? Like, even stages, like your team, and how do you activate that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we look at it as just the simplicity of what it needs to look like. And if you compare it to how we plan all channels, we would look at like a podcast and a direct buy and an integration that way as our out of home, right? It's big, it's bold, it's, you know, it lives there for as long as that podcast is on its streaming service. The next stage is then what do we take into that like long tail and where it's now defined as programmatic, and that's where we look at genre targeting either via SACs or PMPs with the different providers like Nova or again Acast, looking at what they can do from their talent integration and using known voices as the talent across a genre, and that really helps us maintain a consistency of creative and a voice that people know and trust, and therefore using things like word of mouth as your bigger win. Then we go into like what we make, which, you know, hopefully hits the marks that OMD just presented in terms of creativity. But that's when we look into broader library targeting and making sure that we have that ongoing reach and simplicity in a 15 and a 30. And that way, by just making it its own miniature funnel, if you still believe that they exist within the audio space, we are able to really tactically and strategically buy into the right place at the right time, retargeting from different channels to make sure that our audience knows that the Bulldogs and the Dragons played over the weekend. It was a great fucking game, or whatever it may be, right? So pardon the French gay. But that's where we're trying our best to make sure that programmatically is pure strategic, timed and aligned with everything else we're doing in market. But more succinctly, it's making sure that when we've chosen, whether it be a podcast or streaming audio, it's decided to make sure that we are hitting the mark with either the creative or an offer.
Great, thank you. And Thomas, to you. I think Thad mentioned we're, try not to tie it back too much to ROI, but there is that element where programmatic sort of hits those KPIs and is that efficient path to audiences and measurement. It was great to hear Brian say that Australia is leading that charge in educating the market, and that's something that I think everyone in this room is trying to do better and continue to educate buyers and clients. How are your teams educating, planning and buying audio for your clients, and then sort of elaborating furthermore on programmatic? What do you see those key benefits and challenges are?
Yeah, so I think within Zenith, we sit part of Publicis, and the way we're approaching it, as with most of the market, is you got to be agnostic when it comes to audio. The same way when BVOD came in for television, everyone started going, you can't plan in isolation, you need the teams to come together, because that's the reality. And as more and more channels become more and more converged, it's a necessity now. You can't have teams sitting separately and treating the budget separately. So internally, the way we're looking at it is going, well, you need to understand both worlds, but more importantly, you then need to understand how audio plays into your objectives to drive the ROI. And ROI is not just sales, right? Thad made a point of it earlier. It could be awareness, consideration, purchase intent, trust, the list goes on, right? And I think the human element, because there's products now that are being created to help those converged conversations, is more and more critical than ever. And the reason being is the way you would then split up your investment if you're going after a consideration campaign versus a purchase intent versus awareness will be very different between broadcast, digital audio, and within digital audio being streaming, music, podcasting, right? So I think the way that we're approaching it is to go upskill as many people as we can on the fundamentals, being the trading part, but then taking it to that strategic level and going, all right, when you're thinking about these kinds of campaigns, these are the factors you have to consider. And then ultimately, the way that we have to approach it is it's not a one-size-fits-all. So the number of 11% being thrown out there, right? Great, that could be a guide, but depending on your objective, it might be more, it might be less within the digital audio space versus the linear audio space. So I think that's the way that we're approaching it. The broader market, from a lot of conversations with everyone in this room, are wanting it to be approached because it can't be one size fits all. Then from a programmatic point of view, I think that there's a lot of benefits for agencies and clients. Obviously the targeting and the ability to go more granular on things. And I think I said this at the IAB conference for the video. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Again, take that step back with the stuff you've seen today. What's my objective? What am I trying to do? What's the benefit of programmatic as a trading mechanism to get to that objective? And not think about it in isolation, but go, all right, audio has this role in the broader mix, and then within that, how am I going to then treat my programmatic layer to amplify what I need to within that broader channel mix and within that broader audio mix.
Thank you. And then Sachi, I guess, being that platform, and we talk about measurement and obviously linking in programmatic, it's great that we're seeing this positive shift and that audio is underpinning all of these other opportunities. But what about measurement? It feels like we're trying to draw a line in the sand, or we're flying this plane and trying to build it at the same time. And so from your perspective, what do we need to do to get there? And then secondly, how are you approaching measurement at the Trade Desk?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. A lot of the data we've seen today, and even some of the info from the State of the Nation report that came out in February, kind of showed that the main reason that people are shifting investment to audio is data and targeting, is incremental reach. But then when we look at those same reports, 60% of the respondents are saying they're going to look at PG for this year. And the reason I kind of bring that up is exactly to your point. We need to stop looking at audio as this emerging channel or something that should be bought in silo, when actually it's just a part of the premium internet, and we should be planning and treating it as such. And then when it comes to measurement, that's when we're really looking at the data in, the data out, and our existing tools that we use for the premium internet and an omni-channel campaign to really look at audio as well. I think from the Trade Desk perspective, we're really lucky that we've really built our platform on these strong foundations. We have a measurement marketplace that works with third-party vendors to kind of verify, whether that be from an attention or a brand safety, hopefully yes, but kind of brand lift perspective as well. And I think the research backs that up. We did some neuro research, seems to be the hot type of research in the room today, last year as well. And it did show that when audio is used in conjunction with an omni-channel campaign, there's an 80% increase in brand affinity. When we're talking to our brands and our agencies as the Trade Desk, we know that objectivity and transparency is really important to them. And from that perspective, we really do allow everyone in the room really to have access to kind of that impression level data. So it's not just the media metrics through our platform or a third party that you're looking at, but you can get that data in and out to kind of manipulate in the way that you need to for your brand as well.
Thank you. And then Thad, obviously you had the session before and went through some of the research and wanted to sort of extend a little bit. I know you said there was only 30 slides and there's probably about 100 of them. Yeah. And so I guess from your side, what is the biggest sort of feedback or insight that whilst you were looking at that research, do you think will help underpin audio investment going into 2026?
I think it actually wasn't even captured in the research, to be honest with you. All of those things in the research are really important for shaping how we should be looking at audio. But the big job to be done is to get audio in the consideration set for agencies and clients. When agencies are pulling together a media campaign, you have to be top of mind and you have to be giving them a reason to think about you in that moment when they are making their channel decisions. As we touched on before, the fragmentation of channels and opportunities are endless. So why audio? And I think that why audio job is the job that, as a group here and an industry, that's what we need to do. The IAB and the CRA are doing a great job of that, but I think as a group we need to kind of come together and make sure that we're giving people the right data and reasons to support why audio. And like I said, sometimes shifting that conversation from just pure ROI, because that isn't helping the why audio piece as well.
We want to make it as easy as possible for our clients and have that same conversation and narrative, I guess, going out in market. Anyone else have sort of any additional thoughts to extend from Thad to sort of move that spend for audio going into this year?
So I think it's, I think we've all talked about it today, and it's about that simplicity around measurement for sure, but I think it's more than that. I think it's buying, I think it's measurement, but it's also reporting standardisation. I mean, we've all had to work through having syndicated measurement, and then you end up with first-party data, and then you end up with download data. We've all worked through that and worked out how to manage all of that, report it back to our clients. But the reality is that I think I can't remember who said it earlier about was talking about people getting sacked for or people not being promoted for getting it wrong, and it's about de-risking it for our planners and buyers when we're talking to clients, of finding a way of de-risking that. Because I was thinking about this when we were preparing, and I was thinking, well, standardisation reduces friction, but friction reduces budgets. So that's why we need to. That's why that has to be a focus for the industry for sure.
And I think just to build on that, standardisation reduces creativity, and that's one of the big risks. And we've talked about programmatic, and I'm a big fan of the job that programmatic can do in reaching out audiences for the right campaigns. But if we just focused on that part of what audio can do, then we're missing the fundamental strength of audio, which is connecting with audiences through talent that engages with them every day.
I think it's like, just don't, I mean, from my end, and probably making it a bit too simple, but just don't get cute with it, right? Like, I guess more from my end, being client side and having the ability to do the strategy, the planning, and not necessarily get too much sign off, probably asking for forgiveness more than, can I do this? But I think there's the ability that they work in, to use a fun term in media, they work in synergy, they work in tandem. If you have your creative podcasting integration that lives forever, as well as a pre and mid roll, and then your programmatic buy as well, like all of this stuff just amplifies itself. And then when you look at an omni-channel strategy, it only benefits. It only allows you to do more, expand your narrative, expand your messaging. But again, getting too cute with the ROIs or the measurement side of things, like I'd love to know how deep we go into out of home every year. Like it's a bit of a joke at the end of the day that we just report on reach, high five, and spend another $3 million for 2 weeks. Like it just gets, and again, not to annoy anyone in the room, I probably won't be invited back, but that's the reality of it, right? Like thinking about it digitally and thinking about how we get into this, like we are then looked under a microscope for that finite moment that wasn't the justification for the buy. There were better and more important things like trust, like brand affiliation and stuff like that. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
I think that's the important thing. It's establishing the right measurement framework and not just relying on the media metrics, right? And it's going to be different for every category. Market mix modelling for certain categories, phenomenal. Other categories, as that alluded to in the previous presentation, nowhere near as good, but that's looking at one metric. If you then define what that metric is that you're trying to achieve, yes, the ROI might not be as strong when you look at it from a market mix modelling point of view, but actually if you go and look at it in the lens of how you've set that up and why you're doing it, it could be phenomenal, right? It could be the trust play, it could be, the purchase intent play. But I think that, and it was interesting because it came out in the research, right? From a measurement point of view, the key things everyone's going to look at for audio: CPM, reach, efficiency, all the standard stuff. And then you go, okay, so we want to move towards podcasting because we've seen the numbers there. We want creators driving audio for us, but we're going to then measure it on the old metrics. Is that right? Does that then mean that on the old metrics, it may actually not stack up when Harry's got to go on his CFO and go, I need this much money, I want to do this, and he turns around and goes, prove it's going to work from an ROI point of view. And all we've got is a reach and frequency target. And they go, that's more expensive than that. And then all of a sudden, we're going back to you guys going, sorry, we can't do it because CPMs need to be cheaper. And you're going, well, I can't make that happen. And then you've got to walk away from it. But setting the right measurement up front and framing it in a way that makes Harry's job easy to go, this is why we're doing it, here's the proof point, here's how we're going to measure it, that's the avenue to get more and more in front of these planner buyers, in front of clients, and showcase the power that audio can have.
But the reality is that most budgets are outcome-based budgets.
100%.
And the reality is to grow by the 100 million, the 200 million, whatever it is, that number that we believe that the industry should grow by, to attract those outcome-based budgets, there needs to be, I don't disagree that it's a framework and it might not be old metrics, but there needs to be some level of standardisation. Otherwise, you're just making it too hard for buyers, particularly for mid-market brands and smaller agencies.
I think the only thing I would add to that is thinking about how we can come in as buyers further up the funnel. Oftentimes, by the time you're talking to a planner buyer or someone who's actually looking to execute on a digital budget, it's too late. If we want to really cement ourselves as a strong channel for audio, we need to be there within the strategy and conception stages with brands so that the idea is sold in before the budgets are even allocated by channel, whether that's programmatic or more holistically. And I think that's something that invite us in, but I think that we should push to as companies as well.
No,
Look,
I don't disagree. I just think that the reality is, as I said before, there is hundreds of media channels and publishers and formats all vying for the same dollars. And there has to be a compelling reason, and you have to be top of mind to be able to be in that mindset when the strategy is being developed, to be able to be brought in that time. So
For sure.
I think that's the challenge to the room is how do you do that?
An omni-channel DSP. No, joking.
just for the panellists, one word. I think we can see there's probably lots of words that we could probably have at the end of this, but one word for audio and what it looks like in 2026. One word.
Catalytic.
Ooh.
Wow.
Don't look at me, I'm still thinking.
How do we follow up with that? Yeah. I think stickiness.
Bad.
Sorry.
I'm going to focus on the word creativity because I think that's what we should be focusing on with audio.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick to entertaining.
I'll go boring because I've harped on about it a while, but it's measurement, but the right measurement.
Great. Well, thank you, guys, for today. It's been great, and thank you to everyone for sticking around for our last session. Appreciate it.